Good morning, guys. Today I have the pleasure of introducing our best speaker yet. From personal experience, I can tell you this is going to be a one-of-a-kind talk. So just to kind of give a little overview, if it's anybody's first time, we are holding a marriage and family life meeting we're aiming for the third Sunday of each month. The speakers, as Peter will tell you, are not necessarily experts. We're all kind of learning from books and sharing the knowledge and the knowledge we gain from reading specific books or listening to specific podcasts or lectures or stuff like that. So today Peter is going to give us a talk, and it should be recorded. I know somebody was asking about accessing the previous topics. So we didn't have one last month, but we are picking back up, and we are set for the rest of this year. So
let's stand up and pray. Just say our Father. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thank you. Try to move up. Come up, first few rows, so we can have a discussion throughout. Thank you for the nice introduction. Do a timer just to keep me. Okay, good morning, everybody. Hi, welcome. For those that were not here for Irini's very nice and flattering introduction, I'm Peter. Okay, and here's what I am and am not. I am not a marriage professional. I'm not even that great at marriage, she'll tell you. So I think the first couple of lectures that we had were home runs. Everybody loved it. We had fantastic speakers who were actually professional, mental health professionals, psychiatrists, and marriage and family counselor. You're not going to get that today with me. What you're getting today is a book report, okay? That really, so I just want to be clear. And that's what this, move up guys, and that's what this is meant to be, is a book report, right? Or sorry, this meeting is meant to be a mix of, I'm gonna have to reestablish a connection. That's what this meeting is meant to be, is a mix of, yes, we're gonna get professionals to come speak to us, but we're also just a community of people who are trying, to live in Christ and have the best marriages possible. And so, Irini gave a fantastic talk a couple of months ago based on a book report. So bear with me, if somebody has differing opinions on a word I use or, the right kind of philosophy on mental health, that's fine, we can debate it. I don't think that I'm right because I'm giving you a book report and I'm a guy who's been married, how long have you been married? 11, 12 years, almost 12 years. So, what I'm here to talk about today is a book that I read. Oh, geez, not able to connect. Bear with me one sec. Who are you going to ask? Yeah, it was just up. I'm going to reconnect to Wi-Fi and get it up there. This is going to be hard without the slides, so give me a sec. Huh? Maybe it's off the laptop. Let me try off my phone. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I did. It's okay. I'll go off my phone. Sorry, guys, technical difficulties. Okay, so the topic, well, we see if we can get this working. So the topic is building your mate's self-esteem. The idea is that, let's see if I can get my self-esteem up and get this to work. No, I know. Thank you. Okay, let's go sideways. All right, close enough. Okay, so I did. Maybe somebody can help me. Yeah, come help me. Scroll forward. All right. Come back on. I think the Wi-Fi is kind of messed up today. Mm-hmm.
I don't think it is though. I don't think it's connected to my phone.
I know, it won't.
Oh, it says no internet connection.
The Wi-Fi is kind of messed up.
Where's that device at? Which one? So you're on-
HRC. HRC?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're on now. Unable to.
Okay,
You
that's
can
okay.
do it with your phone.
I'm trying.
Your Wi-Fi, you turn it off and on, like you.
Yeah, I did.
So yeah, it's off.
Oh, the Wi-Fi is off. No, the Wi-Fi is off. That's right.
You actually give it a moment.
As long as you guys don't compete with each other.
Yeah, it's a network, right?
Yeah, something's wrong.
Is everyone's on the same network here?
I don't know.
Because it was working to it.
Still me?
Yeah, the network's messed up. Where's the Wi-Fi? Where's the router at?
Sorry, guys, we're really starting at 11:30. You guys all
Yeah.
come too early.
Laptop's kind of sluggish too.
Definitely have to reset it.
Yeah, it won't even connect to. Is that HRC, the router, the network,
Let's try it.
or the HTTP?
Thanks. All right, let's try again. So, the idea of this book is that everybody, whether you think it is relevant to you or your spouse or not, has some sort of struggle with self-esteem. So the interesting kind of counterpoint here is some people might think their spouse has too much self-esteem, right? They might think like, they argue too much, they're way too self-assured, they're way too confident in their position, etc. Well, actually, that might even be, a clue that they actually do struggle with self-esteem. And so, kind of as a starting kind of philosophy, one thing that we want to align on is that everyone struggles with self-esteem. Almost especially if they come across too strong, was almost like narcissistic, right? There's lots of politicians or famous people, you might think they have too much self-esteem. That's actually a lack of self-esteem, trying to prove themselves. And so, it's crucial that we serve our spouse. Out of love for our spouse, out of service for our spouse, it is crucial that we serve them and make this mentality of supporting and building their self-esteem, one of the key services that we can give them. And that's kind of the main point of the book, moving from, a set of background thoughts, and I'll move forward, a set of background thoughts on self-image, which is basically the story that we tell ourselves, right, every day. Either, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not successful enough, et cetera, to feeling more, let's call it balanced, right? That's kind of the main point here, is that when I am stuck on one point, right, whether it's how, whatever, athletic I am, how smart I am, how much money I make, how much, I can make one person happy, then I am more set up for being not as confident in myself as can be. And as a spouse, I can serve my partner by helping them be more balanced, right? And to see themselves the way God sees them, which is not based on one metric. It's based on their value in God, right? From a psychological perspective, that's going to be a little more nuanced than that and based on lots of different factors. And so the book report that I'm giving today is basically a breakdown of, it's not maybe everything, but about 10 different building blocks that we can look at to say, how do I help my spouse have that balance? How do I help them, not just be ultra focused on their self-identity being based on one or two things? Because when they are based on one or two things, those things are bound to not go well at some point, right? And so I can serve my spouse by supporting the balance across those, across that spectrum. And so we know that self-image is central to everything I do, to how I am when I'm by myself, how I am when I'm with people, how I am at work, how I am at sport. It is central to who I am. So you never, also point B, you don't know what's happening in somebody's mind. They don't always articulate it well. Sometimes they don't know what's happening in their mind, right? So these kind of cheesy images, I hope you can see it from where you're at. The cat thinks it's a lion, or the sad person thinks they're happy. And people are not always self-aware of what's happening. And so you can't just assume like, yeah, this isn't relevant to me or my spouse because they have great self-esteem, right? This is something that we have to commit to up front. And so clues that these things could be, okay, so there's kind of a baseline. A baseline is, it doesn't have to be a struggle for this to be something that we should focus on, right? Let's say I don't, Rini doesn't think that I struggle with it. It's still something that's good for her to focus on for me and me for her. However, there are those that it is a struggle, right? It's not just, a baseline of like everybody struggles a little bit. There are those that struggle even more. And some clues around that, again, not a psychologist here, just coming from the book, but some of these clues include things like childhood abuse, somebody that might fear being vulnerable, they're sometimes dishonest, somebody who gets discouraged really easily. This is probably everybody in this room, including me, by the way, so don't feel like attacked. being discouraged, lacking confidence, struggling with decision making, somebody who won't admit being wrong in a minute. But when I think about how do I do this, there are winning mindsets and attitudes, right? So those mindsets there's four. There's four kind of just generalized mindsets that we want to think about. Number one, that it's better to give than receive. So I might be tempted sitting here today to think, I'm so glad that my spouse is sitting next to me hearing this because they need to help me with my self-confidence or self-esteem, and I really hope they do it, right? No. It's better to give than to receive, right? You will reap what you sow. You may not reap what you sow, but there is beauty and a Christ-like nature in committing to building this person up, right? God has put this person in your life, has made this person, one with you, and there is value and winning by just deciding, I will give, and not expecting in return, right? And that's what Christ did for us. So of those four winning mindsets, we have to genuinely believe that it is better to give than to receive. Number two, the guy rolling the thing up the hill, is we have to persevere. We have to push through, right? Things are not easy, but nothing good comes easy. So we'll persevere. It's better to give than receive, and it's good to persevere. Number four is kind of the mind connection, is we want to continually be connected to and learn and study our mate, right? I need to be somebody who studies and looks into what my mate is thinking, right? I'm gonna say mate or spouse, husband, wife, whatever, partner. So this mind connection of wanting to genuinely understand and have a positive mindset towards my spouse, right? And then the final mindset, which is the underlying one, is giving it to God, right? Through God, through our relationship in Christ, that is how we win. And so those mindsets are kind of broken down into attitudes. And so these attitudes, I might say, could be mantras, meaning things I tell myself on a daily basis, right? Or things I review, which is, it's better to give than receive. I need to understand my spouse. We're going to persevere through everything. You'll reap what you sow. I'm going to be a lifelong learner, and we're going to be accountable to one another. And finally, we need to offer and accept vulnerability. So offer and accept vulnerability. It means I can't just say, hey, I need to know what you struggle with. I need to know what's going on with you, so tell me, right? It's, again, these are all connected. You reap what you sow. So, if I start with my vulnerability and saying, like, I really struggle with this, or I felt down about myself with that, and sharing it with your spouse, then you're more likely to receive it. And underlying all of that is that God is sufficient, and God is the path, and our relationship with God and our foundation in God is the pathway to success and to building each other up. And so through all of these things is how we'll be liberated from our poor self-esteem that really the devil tempts us with. All right, so with that, and somebody tell me if it ever goes out. With that, there's 10 ingredients, which are the building blocks. I'm going to go through them over the next 10 slides, but really focus on the preparation. The preparation is, as we go through these steps, we need to pray for grace and humility. Again, grace and humility. Humility, because this may not be easy. You may get pushback. You may think, oh, this is so frustrating. I'm trying to build them up, but they're pushing back on me. They're making it difficult. They're arguing with me. I'm trying to give them X, Y, and Z, and they don't even appreciate it, right? That takes grace and humility. And in every single step, you can think and see how Christ offers these things to us, and ultimately we put him on a cross and had him shed his blood for us, even though he offered all these 10 blocks and more for us. And so really it's that connection with Christ and being Christ-like that allows us the grace to offer these services to our spouse. And so if we're committed to these attitudes and these mindsets, and we pray for grace and humility, then we can, and then and only then can we focus on building our mate through these practices. Okay, so building block number one is unconditional acceptance. So what are the main points of that? It's that everyone fears rejection. Everybody fears rejection. You, amongst every other human on the planet, should be the one that does not reject your mate. right? Far too often this happens. There's lots of different forms of rejection. There's probably forms of rejection that you didn't realize you were doing or that are perceived as rejection, right? If there's anybody in the world that unconditionally accepts you, it should be maybe, let's say, your parents and your spouse, right? It's amazingly hurtful when you feel rejected by your spouse. And so the key point to doing that is verbalizing it, right? Too many of us, either from fear or it's not our habit or it's not our style, don't verbalize it. So key point number 2 is we need to verbalize this unconditional acceptance. And these things need to be packaged in actual feelings and mentality of unconditional acceptance, not just words. So what does that mean? That means, okay, I attended a talk and I decided that I really do want to, come over here, please. So you can see. You can just go with me to the next slide. Okay, so I attended a talk and I'm going to offer my spouse unconditional acceptance. We've been fighting for a few days, or we generally, have ups and downs, and I'm often angry with them and so on. I really do love them, but okay, that was a good idea, building block number 1. I'm going to show unconditional acceptance, but it's not coming from your heart because you still have some resentment or whatever, right? They can feel that. Human beings have really, really good sensors for knowing when they're being lied to or something is genuinely being offered to them. And so the key point to unconditional acceptance is actually feeling it, right? Actually going through the steps of accepting this person and then verbalizing it. And so the challenges to that include differences in personality, right? Like, I am an extrovert and the other person's an introvert, or I'm super organized and the other person's not. It's really hard to accept something that is the opposite of me, right? I want to change things to be the way that I want it and think that the world should be. That makes it hard to accept. We all have unmet needs, right? When you have unmet needs, it puts you in an uncomfortable spot, and you don't want to accept that. You don't want to accept that life is just out of your control, out of your hands. The person that you're tied to is not going to meet your needs and is not going to help make life the way that you want it to be. And so why should you accept that, right? The final challenge can you turn it sideways? The final challenge is that to some people, acceptance is synonymous with giving up, right? That is not a good mentality to have. That is not going to lead us to success. It's a long road. We're going to persevere. There are some things that we should stick with, and some things that we need to say, hey, maybe it's not so important. But when we are stuck in these challenges, right, focusing on my unmet needs, focusing on not being somebody that settles, then it's going to be impossible to offer unconditional acceptance. And so the steps that we want to take are to pray for my own motives. Why really am I, having this requirement or this need, right? Is it Christ-like? Is it God-like? When I do discuss my needs, because we should, right, and kind of tying back to other lectures that we've had, we should be very open. This does not mean being, shutting up and not talking about your needs so that your spouse can feel accepted. It's about gentleness. It's about the approach. It's about accepting this person and partnering with them, right, in a gentle way. And so learning that style and that communication approach that can let little stuff go, can approach the discussion of needs and wants in a gentle way, those are the way that somebody can feel partnered with and accepted and not pandered to, right? Also, somebody can tell when they're being pandered to, meaning, okay, they want me to feel accepted, so I can tell they're just holding back and not saying what they want or need, right? It's more mature and nuanced than that. It's being a genuine partner that trusts this person that they can partner with you. Okay, next slide, please. So building block number 2 is dealing with the past, right? One of the biggest challenges that probably every human can struggle with in terms of their self-esteem is the past. The past can mean a lot of different things. It can be it can be trauma from the past. It can be something that happened in my childhood. It could be something that happened not in my childhood more recently. It can be a big mistake, right? It can be a problem that happened in the marriage, right? The past can haunt, and probably does haunt, the vast majority of us. So one of the key blocks to building my mate's self-esteem is putting a positive perspective. So key point, put a positive perspective on your mate's imperfect past, right? The narrative that we put to it and the way we label things that have happened are a huge element of how I help build my spouse. And so, there are things that come from our past, and the book kind of talks about, probably, it could be late in marriage, it could be early, but, things like, cutting ties from the past. Let's say, you're still too dependent on your parents, or some relationship from the past, or some friendship from the past, right? There's a lot of different elements about things that were pre-marriage or earlier in the marriage that you want to help remove, right? And you remove that through putting a positive perspective on it. Now, again, you reap what you sow. One of the most important things in doing that is doing it for yourself first, right? Not depending on them to do it for you, but putting a positive perspective on your own past, right? Then and only then can you help your mate do that. And so the steps that we want to take are to deal with the past, but don't force discussion on this too deeply. You should be able to talk about it, but this is a sensitive one. And so, as necessary, depending on what the issue is, right? If it's some sort of trauma or just something that we're not well equipped as lay people to deal with, is encourage therapy, right? Encourage going to a Christian counselor, not in like an accusatory way, but like, hey, this sounds like something that like we've struggled with for a while. We're trying together. Like let's get professional help, and doing it for yourself. Again, dealing with your own past, maybe you need to be the one that takes the first step and process these through a therapist on your own. And then that might encourage them to do the same. This can be a huge kind of stumbling block and barrier to self-esteem, and only through dealing with your own past and helping your mate deal with theirs and putting a positive perspective on your own and their own imperfect past, washing away the sins, both that God washed away and you letting go of the sins that you're holding on to from your spouse, then and only then can they really have kind of an optimized self-esteem. Next. Okay, so number 3, and I'm going to go a little faster because I know we got a late start, but number 3, planning positive words. So I don't know if you can see it. So I have 2 different images there. The first one is turning can't into can, right? Really focusing on positive words. That's a literal thing. Focus on positive words, and then being a cheerleader. I think Abuna said that earlier today. And I have 2 different cheerleaders here, right? I have the peppy pink cheerleader that's like, genuinely happy, and then like the cynical cheerleader. So a side note, I was in basketball when I was in high school, and like by the time I was in varsity, I was on the bench most of the time next to the cheerleaders. And like, it was the worst because they were there only because they had to be, right? And they're like, dribble it, pass it, put it in the basket. And I was like, you don't care. Like, you're just here doing a job, and you don't actually believe what you're saying. That was worse. I was like, it's worse for you being here, like not having actual positivity towards this team than like if you weren't here at all. So be a cheerleader, but be the pink cheerleader. Be a raw, they're the best cheerleader, okay? That is so valuable. There is so much beauty in being the almost like hopelessly positive person in your spouse's life. That sows the seed of praise and hope in your spouse. And they can tell if you which cheerleader you are, right? They can tell if you're just like doing it or if you have really put a positive mindset towards it. So praise about specific, and this is something really helpful that I read recently. Praise about specifics. Make your praise global, and if you have to criticize, keep it local. So meaning, you find your spouse doing something good, take that and globalize it. Like, hey, thank you for making dinner, that's local. You know, you're always trying to take care of me. I really appreciate that. Like, that's a globalized thing. Versus you did something that they don't like, or they did something you don't like, keep that local, right? We tend to do the opposite. It's, hey, you made a mess, you always make a mess. You're so messy. Why globalize that? This is a local situation, right? So that cheerleader, you know, it doesn't mean don't bring it up. It means keep it local, right? Like, hey, could you please, you know, help me with this thing that, you know, this is, you know, messed up. Can you help fix this? Versus when you find something good, spread that out, globalize it. And so be genuine, be a genuinely positive cheerleader, speak words and belief into your spouse. And so we know that this is an important mentality to have. It's possible that nobody else in the world, it's probably likely that there's nobody else in the world that fully believes in your spouse, right? Like maybe nobody even thinks about you that much other than your spouse. You should be that one. Okay, next one, number 4. Okay, next building block is use difficult times to construct self-esteem. So the key points there are when your spouse is going through something hard, whatever, insert, all of us are going through something hard, almost all the time, right? I don't even need to go through the list, but hard things, right? Financial, family, illness, whatever. Absolutely, positively, never ever kick while they're down, right? That is super destructive. So pull that out of your personality if that's something that you know, you're accustomed to. If it's happened, let it go. From now on, never be somebody that kicks while somebody's down, right? So the challenges to this are that, you know, stress obviously undermines self-esteem. You have self-doubt. This thing didn't go well. This thing is going poorly in my life. I don't know how I'm going to control X, Y, or Z. One of the biggest challenges is when one spouse is stressed, or whatever's happening to one spouse's life is probably happening to you both, 9 times out of 10, right? So getting yourself under control, you know, through your relationship with God, you know, being independently okay, then and only then can I really help build my spouse through this challenge, right? Maybe there's a situation where it's really just theirs, right? So I would really hope that in that situation, or we would really hope in that situation, that you can truly build them up. But a lot of times it's going to be our struggle. A lot of times it's going to be our struggle. So I want to deal with it on my own as much as possible, and then from there, really help build them up. And so the steps that we're going to take are deal with your own stressors, give them time to process it, serve them, find out what they practically need, provide that service, pray about it together, and offer a godly perspective. So when there's a struggle, we really want to serve our spouse practically and through helping frame up whatever's happening in a godly perspective, whether it's illness or death or financial hardship, etc. Right? God's given us the roadmap through the Bible and through the teachings of the church to view that thing positively. The final kind of point here is when we're having any type of struggle, we want to, I use the word aggressively on the slide when it comes back up, aggressively prioritize your relationship. When there's some sort of problem in life, it's really easy for the relationship to go on the back burner and to be not relevant, but that is the time in terms of their self-esteem and showing how important they are. That is really the time that you want to focus on the relationship. Do you need help? It's okay, they can't see it. All right. It didn't go full screen. Vanna White. Okay. Okay, next one. So number 5. Number 5 is freedom to fail. Okay, so what does that mean? It means we're all perfectionists, right? We all think that we need to succeed at everything we do. And so we want, above all, to release our spouse from what we call the prison of performance, right? That means that whether it's a failure that's happening now or a failure that happened in the past, this can be similar to the dealing with the past building block, but we want to release them from their personality and their success being really dependent upon their ability to succeed, right? That's not who you are, in other words. Reminding them that they have value that is independent from their success, right? This is a huge kind of step towards self-esteem and building their self-esteem that we can offer them, right? Not tying their value in life to how much they succeed. And so some of the challenges that we have here are perfection standards that we grew up with, and life being filled with perceived failures, right? Every single day, depending on how we frame it, we can call almost everything that happens a failure, right? Because it didn't meet some standard, right? We wanted to get to church at X time, we got there 20 minutes after. Failure, right? We wanted the kids to behave a certain way. Failure, right? And the kids never behave that way. We wanted this, and this. Right? At work, I wanted this to happen. There are, you could have 50 failures a day, depending on your mentality, right? You need your spouse above all, and you want to be that spouse that helps them not frame things that way, right? That wants to frame them as winners throughout their day and throughout their life. And so the way we do that is we give them the gift of compassion for any mistakes. We give them continual affirmation. We never reject them. We want to have a perspective of, does this thing really matter, right? Is this God's view? What would Jesus do? And we really want to fix the narrative of life, right? So again, the narrative, if we let it, can be very perfectionism focused and perceived failures throughout the day. We want to be that source of positivity and viewing things for their successes and divorcing, I don't want to use that word, but like separating their value as a person from their ability to succeed at small tasks, big tasks, promotion, like it doesn't matter. Whether it's, again, waking up on time to getting a promotion, those are not what gives somebody value, and you want to communicate that. Okay, number 6, and I hope you can see the image here. Number 6 is please and serve your spouse. This is like not the most PC term, nowadays, but we have an image of a butler, right? Genuinely, if we can focus on pleasing and serving our mate, that communicates that they're a priority and that they're valued and that they're cherished and that they're loved, right? And so being the butler or the maid, which again is like not how anybody wants to be perceived, is such a gift, right? And requires so much humility, right? The challenges to that are selfishness, right? What about me? Why would I do that? That's not me, They should be serving me. I already do so much, right? There's lots of mentalities that get in the way of doing this, right? Another challenge is that my spouse might be a really ungrateful receiver, right? There's nothing like more upsetting than trying really hard to please somebody and they stink at receiving it and being grateful, right? You want a lot of praise and they're not offering it. Time restraints and bitterness about the relationship can get in the way as well. And so we want to take on a servant mindset. As Christ washed the feet, the really dirty, nasty feet of the disciples, right? He bound himself, he kneeled down, he washed their feet. We want to also be servants in this manner, right? And take on this mentality. And so in order to do that, we want to meet the core needs of our spouse. In order to meet the core needs of our spouse, we want to understand them, right? And that goes back to that mentality of being a lifelong learner, right? And being connected to my spouse and wanting to understand what they want and need. Hi, girls. So we want to be willing to sacrifice, be romantic and adventuresome, and generally, again, this mentality of being what we're going to call a maid or a butler to a reasonable extent for our spouse, and in order to communicate how much we value to them, or how much we value them. So number 7 is living a godly life together, right? No particular order, by the way. So foundationally is living a godly life together. And by living a godly life together, we bind ourselves and our spouse to Christ. The challenge can be what we'll just call, frankly, living a fake Christian life together, right? Just going through the motions, not having our spirit in it. And so as an individual and as a family, we want to dedicate ourselves to Christ and to obedience to him, right? So how do we do that? We individually hone our own relationship with God, right? Not dependent upon my spouse, right? Having my own connection with God, really dedicating myself to my spiritual life. And then from there, engaging with my spouse in prayer, applauding their good choices, avoiding over-focus on bad choices or sins, right? You should hold each other accountable for sure, but really being somebody who errs on the side of positivity, right? Errs on the side of building up and not tearing down. And so, one practical way is that we can establish a contract with God, be really intentional about what is our home, what is our relationship with God as a family, what is our dedication to God in a practical way, and committing to living that godly life together. Next slide. 8. Yep. All right. So this is a good one that often gets overlooked. So a really important building block. Oh, there you go. It's not the slide that I'm on, but okay. Oh. The White Knight.
Just click and to the side, right?
Sure, okay. Thank you. All right, so never too late. Thank you, Winner. I want to turn around so I can see it. Okay. Or actually, it's fine. So it's really important to encourage our spouse to make time to have friends. Why? Friends are people that choose to like you, right? They don't have to. They're actually a really important element of life that often as we get busier and busier can get overlooked, right? So we really want to help our spouse develop friendships. Now, how this tends to, or a lot of times can develop over time is in couple friends, right? Say, well, we're friends with whatever, Fauzi and Fauzia, whatever. And that's how you have friends. That's actually important. The couple friends are important. But it's really critical to have a mix of individual friends and couple friends. And so the mindset that we want to avoid is, and what's practically getting in the way, is not allowing our spouse freedom, either not carving out time for them, having jealousy of competition, right? That's, something kind of in the background that we need to explore. Or one critical point is not appreciating that people are different, especially men and women are different, right? And not understanding that there's a different style. Of course, this is generalization, somebody might push back, but in general, that men a lot of times tend to value activities with their friends, meaning they have to leave the house and go be with other guys in order to bond and make friends. Women a lot of times, not always, value talking, right, and sharing. And so a lot of times that may not require leaving. That could be over the phone, or it may require it. But we want to support each other in building these important relationships. And so the steps we want to do are to encourage them to carve out regular and repeated times to build same-sex friendships, to be really clear, right? Same-sex friendships when it comes to the individual friendships. And be willing to serve the home during that time. So that means a husband, being willing to whatever, take the kids or deal with the home, whatever it is, for extended periods of time at some regularity. It's up to each, couple to determine what's reasonable and appropriate for you. But making that something that's a part of the rhythm of life, right? Not just a one-off thing that happens, whatever, very infrequently. This is really crucial for their self-esteem. Part B of that is, yes, you need couple friends. Try to choose couple friends that work for both of you, right? Not just one spouse being really tight with the person of the same sex and the other one, whatever. That might happen here and there, but in general, really focus on friendships. It's an often overlooked element of life. Okay, almost there. Next is keeping life manageable. So what that means is when elective, meaning when it's a choice, it doesn't mean you can quit your jobs, most of us can't, When elective, however, things that are not fully required, we want to keep life simple and manageable and decrease life's demands and stressors. It means don't put more things that can be perceived as failures than are necessary in life. That's basically what that means. That's going to have a different iteration for everybody, or a different implementation for everybody. But for some, that might mean don't overcommit or overextend. For others, it might mean draw back on your work requirements, your travel requirements, your social requirements, etc. Seek a balanced life so that you can be perceived as successful as a couple. And so the challenges are going to include competing to do it all and pleasing everybody, comparing to others, it might include like social media or just talking to others and trying to always keep up, right? Draw back, and the steps that we're going to take are, we want to agree on what are our core values, right? We want to agree on what are we both willing to do and willing to quote unquote fail at, or just say this isn't a requirement for us, right? So we want to review our to-do list. We want to take essential things and prioritize them, and deprioritize other things, especially when we can tell our spouse is feeling overwhelmed, is feeling like this is hurting their self-esteem, they're not able to keep up. We want to make life simpler for them. Don't say, things have to be this way and that way. Make it easier to just have a happy, healthy life. And so we want to have balance, we want to schedule regular vacations, and we want to prioritize probably Sundays as a day of rest, or at least the point is one day as a day of rest where you're not trying to get things done, right? God, this was, from the Old Testament, God said, you need this. Like, human beings need a day of not being productive. So we're there, one more. Finally, seeking God's mission for your life together. So what does that mean? That means together, and this is obviously very tied to living a godly life together, choose a mission or a service that you'll pursue together, right? Something outside of your spouse. Again, we're talking about self-esteem, but one of the biggest services you can do is together looking outside of yourselves, right? And deciding what are we going to offer back to God, to the world, together. That could be something huge like, big missions outside of the country. It could be something small like serving your church, serving your community, serving in whatever manner, serving your family. And so some of the challenges of doing that are going to be avoiding a godly life or a godly mission because you're so busy and saying we're already doing so much, we're serving our kids, or just complacency, right? So what we want to do is help your spouse think about what their talents are, how they can be of use to God's purpose. And then pray as a couple how you can be used together, and make sure that you focus on passing on that sense of mission and purpose to your children and making that a rhythm in your family. So that's it. Thank you. Questions, comments? I know we went long. Sorry for all the back and forth on technical stuff. Any thoughts, questions, comments? Disconfirming? What's that? Thank you guys for your patience. Sure. Yeah. I love that. Did everybody hear that? Okay, so Nardine had a great comment. Sorry, I should have handed this to you. Here, why don't you say it? No, it's okay. Nardine was positively commenting that the concept of, tell me if I get it wrong, that the comment of, or the building block of being pleasing and serving your partner, and maybe even viewing yourself to the extreme of like a butler or a maid, that a more biblical term is just helpmate. And that is absolutely kind of God's directive to us, is to be helpmates to one another. That's maybe a better framing for it. Anybody else? Any disconfirming? Any thoughts? Any challenges that we didn't cover? Okay, so the major takeaways are: don't expect this to happen to you. This is something that you need to do for your spouse. If it happens for you, great, but that is not the measure of success. The measure of success is if you can offer these services. So we'll try to make these, I think it was a good book. I think I had it in a link in the deck. We'll try to find a way to send it out, to send out the deck or put it on, maybe we'll try to put these slides on the website. We'll talk to Abuna. And I hope this was helpful. Thank you guys. Okay, let's pray.
We thank you, Lord, for this opportunity, and we thank you, God, for entrusting us to care for one another and for these relationships you've given us. And we ask for your guidance and help, Lord, so that we may treat our spouse and view them the way that you view them. Through the intercession of all your saints, please listen to us when we say our Father, Lord. Thank you guys. As a reminder, the next one, again, is going to be August 20th. It's going to be a little bit of a different format. It's going to be more workshops, so please come ready to participate and tackle challenges with you. No, I'm just kidding. No, nothing aggressive. It's going to be good building relationships.